Hi everyone, and welcome to my pottery journey channel. My name is Nicole and I've been doing pottery for about a year now. My intention is to share my journey in hopes that it will show the reality of how difficult pottery can be, and hopefully sharing what I've learned along the way can help other beginners. So this is back to the cup I struggled to throw, and I now struggle to trim it. We want the clay to be at leather hard stage to trim. This piece must have been well wrapped by me, as this is 1 week later and it's still a bit wet. One of the reasons I can tell it's too wet is because I keep gouging the clay with the trimming tool because it's going too deep into the clay. The tool I'm using is a Mud Tools Dual Trim Tool. It's not sponsored, I did buy this with my own money of course. And also I'm getting a lot of chattering, which is definitely not intentional. I've learned that chattering can happen for a number of reasons. The tool is too sharp maybe, which it is a new tool, so that's quite possible. The tool is held at the wrong angle, too much pressure, the clay's wetness and poor grip. For me today, I think it's a combo of the wrong angle and the clay being too wet and me putting too much pressure on. So I welcome any experience advice in the comments, please. I'm starting to get fed up with how wet it is, and luckily this studio has hairdryers. So in a minute I get up and try and dry the pot for a couple of minutes with the hairdryer, to hopefully have more success with trimming this pot. As you can see, it's very wonky and I'm having a nightmare of a time trying to trim it. Okay, I'm back. I'm now trying to center the pot again. I've been trying to practice tap centering and touch centering, but I'm still no good at it. And I'm also too scared to ruin the pot. So I go back to the first way I was taught, which is by dropping the pin tool down and drawing a circle and trying to get that lined up to the center. And then you move the pot towards the hungry side, which is the thin side. I have been getting better at eyeballing it to be centered, which does help, but I'm no production potter, that's for sure. You can see my tool bumping around a bit, and that's the chattering that's on the surface. It's the uneven surface of the clay. Now I'm tapping to see how much clay I've got left, and I switch eventually to the smaller part of the tool. And I've found that using the smaller part of the trimming tool does reduce chattering, and I'm not 100% sure on the reason why, but I've heard that maybe it's because there's less friction or less leverage for the tool to bump around on the clay. So I give that a go, and it has been working out for me so far, so starting to look a bit better. Again, if anybody wants to explain why this is so, please leave a comment. I would be very grateful for that. Now I usually like to do an extruded foot on my pieces, but after trying to get rid of all that chattering, there wasn't much clay left. You may see me periodically tapping the base of the pot. This is me trying to assess how much clay I've got left, so the thickness of the base. A thick amount of clay will sound like a slapping, dense sound, and the Goldilocks sound sounds more like a drum. It's louder and to me like a pop noise. I have been trying to make lighter pots, and I tend to throw with a thick base so I can get them off the wheel easier. I found that when I had a thinner base and thinner walls that my pots would warp when I tried to slide them off the wheel, and I don't usually work with bats as I don't have any of my own. Also, another reason I like to leave a lot of base when I'm throwing is so that I can make the extruded foot that I prefer. And because I don't usually trim to a flat base, I found out later after the bisque that I actually did a pretty poor job of trimming this pot, because I left too much clay in the center of it and it kind of wobbles now. Lucky this was just a test pot for glazing, and that's another reason why I do an exposed foot, because I don't have to worry about that. The clay I'm using today is Keane Pottery Clay White Stoneware 7 with a speckle. I found it really nice and soft and easy to throw with. Wedging was very easy. And I later glazed this with the Mako Purple Aster brush-on glaze to see how it reacts at cone 9. I haven't actually done much studio time on my own, and I'm finding I'm learning a lot more about the behind the scenes part of pottery that you don't usually see in classes. For example, the drying process and maintaining your work in between. Obviously today I learned that I wrapped my pieces too tight, and a week later they were still a bit too wet for trimming. I also did lightly wrap them after trimming as well, and came back a week later to check if they were bone dry, and they were still wet, so on the drier side of leather hard. I then left them another week unwrapped and they were bone dry by then, so it took about 2 weeks after trimming for me to get them ready for the bisque firing. Another thing I learned was that using the smaller part of the trimming tool does help leveling out the clay and preventing chattering, so I think next time I'll go in with the smaller part of the trimming tool first off. We can see now that I'm starting to have a bit of a better time trimming. It seems a bit smoother, the tool isn't jumping around on my pot, and I'm starting to get a flatter bottom, but you can kind of see that little point in the center. Still tapping it to make sure I'm not going to go through. I'm always scared of that. I have started to enjoy trimming. I used to love throwing so much more because trimming was so difficult and scary, but today I was having a bad day. But otherwise it's pretty satisfying, I think. Okay, I've finally decided that that's enough for today. Put my tools down and put my maker's mark on it. And grab my sponge for some further fettling, getting fingernail marks out and such, which I do enjoy that process as well. I feel like I'm better with the sponge than I am with the tool. Alright guys, thanks for watching, and I hope to see you again soon.